So I'm down here in Bucktown in Chicago, and I'm down here by Akera, and it's shopakera.com. And the girl who is one of the founders who started this, Erica, love the girl, awesome girl, Korean girl, awesome Korean girl, but awesome. Born and raised in America. So, an American Korean. Which my ex was an American Korean. Born and raised in America. Kind of like Cheech and Chong, where he was born and raised in East LA. That was a funny movie. Anyways, awesome stuff. And this is the art district of Chicago. This is kind of like the art and music and this area of Bucktown. This was, I guess, the grunge area back in the day, but this is where they used to have the double door up here, and this is where Eddie Vedder's wife from Pearl Jam, she used to play at the double door. The double door doesn't exist anymore, but she has her own band and he supported it. And then they have a great pizza place called Peace. And here's another pizza place I've never been to, but Peace, it focuses on pan pizza. So Chicago is very much known for pan pizza, and Peace is focused on pan pizza. And they got Tao Tea with the little panda. But this is, again, remember, Chicago's famous for pan pizza and stuffed pizza. New York's famous for their thin crust. We have a different type of thin crust, like I said, a little bit thicker. But there's another music venue here, Subterranean. And this is the Bucktown area. So, and then there's a gym down here, but I'm going to turn around and go up Milwaukee Avenue. So Milwaukee and Damon and North Avenue, 3 intersections. Grocer to Go, I would assume that's focuses on online ordering. And then the Sultan Market. So it looks like it's got gyros and that, Arab food. And here's this gym does like Wintrust does. It has all these small gyms, and they name them for the area. So this is the Bucktown Athletic Club, or BAC, B-A-C. And so they name them this way. They own the Lincoln Park Athletic Club and so on. And so they name them for the area they're in, but they're all one club system, but it seems like it's just local. And so they got a local touch, but a broad base. So that's what Wintrust did with the banks, make it feel like it's a community bank, that's a community gym, but it's not. It's a big chain of gyms, but each of them are named for the local area. And here's the 6-way intersection, Milwaukee, Damon, and North Avenue. And then you got the CTA stop right here. And there's a little cafe over there, the Blue Line, that's under the CTA. That's really cool. But you can see there's a lot of shopping down here. And there used to be a lot of artists. This was the starving artist area. And so there used to be a lot of galleries. Artists like my friend used to be down here, and this is where the less known artists were. So, but they don't do an art fair. The only art fair in Chicago is the Old Town Art Fair, but they could do an art fair right here in Bucktown, but they don't do an art fair in Bucktown. And with that, art, people need to wear clothing, right? When they're doing pictures, unless they're doing a nude, but most of the time it's all wearing clothing. So all these little studios like fringe is the haircut. So when you're doing a painting, you can employ like Floyd's Barbershop or Fringe, which is a local salon, and the hair can be done from them. And so when you put a painting together, which they don't do, you can give credit. Like the Levi jeans provided by Akira on North Avenue in Bucktown in Chicago. And then the hair done by Fringe or Floyd's. And then the makeup done by blank. And then you can give credit to the cosmetic products that are used. The lipstick by L'Oreal and so on. And so when you're doing a painting, you can give credit to all the providers of the clothes in that. And it's another way for artists to get their painting sponsored. Truly. They sponsor it, and then the person that's getting painted, again, maybe do it for a commission, meaning they share in with you, and if the painting sells, they make money, and if it doesn't sell, they don't make money. But they can do it on contingency. If they believe in you, then you might not have to pay the model, and then you can get sponsors for the clothing, makeup, and hair, and everything that's done to the model, and then you paint the painting. Or even if you're doing, let's see, a poster and that, giving credit to people for, like the papers from blank, or the poster was printed by FedEx or Kinko's or so on, and you can give credit that way, and they get in a relationship with you, but they got to believe that it has some value, that if they're going to cut the price or give it to you, then they believe that you're going to create a market for them. You're going to be successful and create awareness for them. And if you're not going to be successful and create awareness, it's pay me. Truly. Because why should I? But if they have a big name, then maybe, or you believe in them, they're like an artist, you see their work and you're like, okay, show me your portfolio. And you're impressed by their portfolio and you're like, okay, I'll take a calculated risk. Here's a Korean restaurant, and I've never been here, but I love Korean food. And then there's Bang, which that looks like a hair salon. But this is all kind of like Bucktown area. So this is Division up here coming up on it. But the point is, doing posters or doing paintings and doing this thing, even how about your camera? Like you're using a camera, like a girl was taking a picture of a couple in the restaurant hat, and she could say, sponsored by Nikon. Truly, picture done by Nikon, and then she could say, I used a blank telescopic lens by Canon, on my Nikon camera. I used this type of film by Panasonic, or I have Panasonic batteries in my Nikon camera. So all of these things are potential sponsors, but they would have to believe you're worth it. You're going to generate revenue to them. So they're going to give you something in exchange for getting something. So they would have to believe in you. Wigs Plus, that used to be a Korean friend of mine. He was in my small group. And anyways, this intersection here, this is just a four-way intersection, 2 streets. But again, this is still kind of the Bucktown, the kind of artsy community. And so this is the vibe it has or the feeling it has. But again, think about this. I'm doing this video on a Samsung phone. I never mentioned that. And so the video you're seeing is Samsung. And I'm doing this in the city of Chicago. Maybe the city of Chicago sponsors me for doing videos. Truly. I approach the city of Chicago. They see the quality of my videos and they like how I represent the city. And they say, you seem to post quality videos related to the city of Chicago, and it seems like you create awareness and it's good for us. We'll sponsor your video. And probably sponsored by the city of Chicago. And sponsored by Samsung phones. And so, again, sponsored by Bucktown Area Chamber of Commerce. Approach a Chamber of Commerce. Say you're doing a featured piece on that area. And if you're a radio talk show host, like I'm lifting After Dark. And so, or after midnight, I should say, which is great. He starts after 12 a.m. So it's after midnight. And so, he starts after 12 p.m., I should say. So it's after midnight. Because after 12 a.m. is afternoon. After 12 p.m., it's morning, really. But it's after midnight. But here, you're looking at, and what I'm saying is that you're going to talk about a specific area, and you can reach out to that area, not only the city of Chicago, but the local Chamber of Commerce, like the Bucktown Chamber of Commerce. Or if you're doing a piece on Chinatown, you can reach out to Chinatown Chamber of Commerce in Chicago. You could reach out to CASEL, the Chinese American Service League, maybe the Chinese Union Church, maybe because you're in a talk about Chinatown, then talk about the church, and they'll go ahead and sponsor you. Truly, if they think what you're going to do and you're going to tell them, I don't plan out my stuff, but if I was doing this, I would plan it out ahead of time, and I would go and try to reach out to these individuals or organizations, individuals in the organization, to see if I could get sponsorship. And here's Twisted Spoke, a nice little bar. Or is this this is the Matchbox, not Twisted Spoke. Twisted Spoke was over there. But anyways, thinking about how you can, and the YouTubers don't think about that. They post stuff like Geography by Jeff. Why doesn't he hit up the state of New York, talk to the governor's office, and say, I'm going to talk about your state, and then he's going to talk about Florida, or he's going to talk about several states. He's going to talk about Canada. Hit up the federal government of Canada. Not only the federal government, but he's going to talk about Quebec. And this is Geography by Jeff. And he could reach out to the Canadian government and tell them and what he's going to do, and then reach out to the area of Quebec, because it's going to be featured, and tell them, and then things that he's going to do, like you're going to bring up the Sears Tower. And you're going to talk about the Sears Tower and its significance in the city of Chicago. Now, I don't know any place in Quebec, but maybe I'm talking about their hockey team and their history and so on, and the stadium, and how Canada is a significant hockey community, and Quebec has a very dedicated hockey fans, and so on. And as you mentioned, you can reach out and they can give you feedback. Sometimes they'll say no, and you still need to do the story and still mention them. If you want to, you can cut them out. But again, you have a story in essence that you're going to put together, and you don't want to sacrifice quality, but also you would like to get recognition and get compensated for your good works. And so there's nothing wrong with doing that. And so, again, you have to understand how to derive, and he's not doing that. Now, he is selling maps, which is great, and he could talk to Geography by Jeff, talk to Rand McNally, and Rand McNally could sponsor his maps, and you could get him in. My friend Bill Mulligan, he works for Rand McNally. Now, Rand McNally could feed information into Google. Truly. They could sell it into MapQuest, into Google, into Apple's Maps, and they can be the input provider. Truly, they got all kinds of maps. And so you can take the ancient trail of Lewis Clark. Yes, Lewis and Clark. You want to relive that path. And so they have a map of Lewis and Clark and the adventures they took. And you want to do that, like going down Route 66, famous Route 66. But think about it. You're going to pass diners. You're going to go through communities. You're going to mention those communities. It's going to take some work. You have to reach out, and then they're going to want to know, and then they're going to want to know about you, and then how you're in the position the piece and everything else. But again, if you're willing to do your work, it can be highly fruitful. And once you get familiar with the process and everything you're putting together, they don't even do this for books. Like Gladwell does pieces, and he talks about communities, or he talks about Down syndrome. Not Down syndrome, but he could talk about Down syndrome. He talks about dyslexia, but he could have mentioned several foundations that work or do anyways, work with dyslexic, work with dyslexic and different foundations and research institutions and so on. And he could have mentioned them in the book. If you want to know more about dyslexia, see this foundation and so on, that you're giving them a shout out. And they could have provided him with more research or input. Maybe it's just them giving him more input. Or maybe they put up the book David and Goliath on their sites. Like the Dyslexia Foundation, they put up the book David and Goliath on their foundation site. So, again, he could have done that. He could have, done talks about dyslexia with the book and the research he found and the pros and cons of dyslexics like Einstein and many others. So, again, there is ways that to do things that you can derive if you know what you're doing, derive your stuff. If you want to be a sponsor of China, truly, like you're here in the United States, and be a sponsor of their products. Meaning you do pieces on the intricacies of, Chinese food and the American culture and how the Chinese came over. Well, it's very good for the Chinese government, talking about the history, like going down to the Chicago Chinatown Museum, right? And you go down to the Chinatown Museum and you talk about the history of the Chinese immigration into the United States and so on. And you go into the Chinese embassy in Chicago, you put it all together, and you say, hey, listen, I'm going to do this pace, and it's going to be, talk about the Chinese immigration, and there's some good and some bad in it. And we're going to feature the history of the Chinese people in the Chicagoland area and their contribution to the area, the challenges they faced and so on when they came over from China, and then talking about, their connection back to China and so on. And you go to the Chinese embassy and say, hey, would the Chinese government be interested in sponsoring this piece? And we'll mention that this research piece, this video, was sponsored by the Chinese government. And then you could have the Chicago's Chinatown sponsor it, and then the Chamber of Commerce, Chicago Chinatown Chamber, like I said, and then Castle, the Chinese American Service League, sponsor it, and then the Chinese Union Church in Chinatown sponsor it, or like you're doing a piece right here, CDW. It's in Vernon Hills. It's a great corporation. It focuses on technology and so on, and you're going to do something, mention them and so on, and in turn you're reaching out to them and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to bring up you and your corporation and the attributes and where I see a vision. And I don't know what your people see a vision, but I'm going to do my story and present your organization as I see it. And would you like to sponsor the video? But you're not selling out your integrity. So people have to trust what you say. And you can say in a disclaimer that the CDW sponsored it, but my vision is not necessarily the vision of CDW. But this is what I think. This is what I think they could do into their future and so on. And they sponsored the video. So I'd like to give a shout out to CDW. Thank you very much for sponsoring my video, as CDW's right there. And they got a WeWork. And CDW with WeWork, well, what does WeWork do? Those are offices, and WeWork, now Vanderbilt University, they have Vanderbilt Office Properties. Okay, so a property management company called Vanderbilt. But WeWork has technology. They use a lot of technology in their offices. And CDW could be the technology provider for WeWork. Truly. And so you get a WeWork space, and they have deals with CDW. And so you get discounts for renting at WeWork, and they work out a deal, special deal with WeWork. And so you get these special deals. Here's Chiro One, Chiropractic One, a wellness center. And then we have 7-Eleven, a convenience store, your local area convenience store. And then down here, over here, is H Mart. And, it's a Korean grocery store. And in Illinois, it's funny, we have lots of Korean grocery stores. So, and the Korean community does very well for themselves. Yeah, the Korean community is affluent. They do very well for themselves. And so we have a lot of Korean grocery stores. And so, again, thinking of ways to get paid for what you love to do. Thinking of ways, and if you do it with high quality, truly with high quality, with integrity, then people trust you, good or bad. They trust you that you're not going to take things out of context, that you're going to put them in the proper context. So, and here's Tesla. And so there's a Tesla dealer. I would like to see them come out with batteries, like Tesla batteries for phones, Tesla batteries in general. But like I said, they really should be a battery company, and a battery company is a power storage company. So any battery company is a power storage company, and they're in the power storage business. Like Panasonic, they make batteries. They're in the power storage business, and they want to get better at storing power. And they have figure out how they can store it, and then how they can distribute it. And so the battery stores the power, and when you connect it and put it into a device, it distributes the power. So again, he's in the storage business, but he's not in the battery business. Why wouldn't you be in the battery business? And he could do a joint partnership with Panasonic. I mean, I forget who helps him with the batteries, but he can do a joint venture with them. So they're a Japanese company, and they're cool. And Pan means around, and Sonic, I don't know, fast movement, sound. So around sound, they used to do audio and TV, so I think it means around sound, Panasonic. So anyways, figuring out, here's Bob's Furniture. Maybe you're going to feature at Bob's Discount Furniture, and there are different pieces and everything. But as you pull up to the store, they have nothing featured in the window but their name, and the windows look like garbage. What do you think people came down here for State Street? They used to come down for the Christmas windows, and they have all the displays and the merchandise, and they would integrate it into the display, and people loved looking at it. But here it looks like a ghetto store, truly. And they could put a TV under that and feature different types of furniture, or talk about Bob's Furniture competitive advantage. And then they have a CBD store and a Krypton. So, and then you got a dollar store and a Petco. And I don't know, I think they have a bunch of dog products at Dollar Tree. But then there's a vitamin store down there, and Vitamin Warehouse can get into pet vitamins. I don't know, but I used to use at PetSmart and Petco, I used to use the grooming there all the time. So, and I forget, was Petco or PetSmart I bought my dog's insurance through. Yeah. Through them, I bought health insurance for my dog. So, again, it makes sense. And then there's, right here, Banfield Pet Hospital. So, Petco could get into pet hospitals, right? It would make sense that they would invest in pet hospitals, right? In veterinary services. So, Petco can get into cattle and livestock, truly. Providing certain things to cattle and livestock. They can get into that industry with ranchers and farmers that have different forms of livestock. And Petco, that's their institutional distribution, that they would deal with ranchers and farmers that have livestock. And it's aquatic livestock or it's animal livestock. And animals or land or bird or whatever, but that's the institutional side of Petco, right? There's an opportunity there looming for them, and also getting into the veterinary worlds and doing stuff and going out to veterinary schools and introducing the doctors truly to Petco and their products. They can have a pharmacy in Petco for drugs, and you can go and pick up your prescription at the pharmacy. So the Banfield Veterinary Hospital says, here's the prescription, and you can pick up the prescription for the drugs for your dog, because I had a skin problem, and I had to give him these pills, and I could have picked it up at Petco at their veterinary, at their pharmacy counter for drugs for dogs. But they can have all the over-counter products, like your dog gets a cold. Dogs get colds. They get fevers, truly. But you have to understand how to take their temperature, and you have to do education, because the owners don't know what's going on. And so you have minute clinics for dogs at Petco. Minute clinics. So if your dog's acting unusual, take them to the minute clinic at Petco. The minute clinic at Petco. And so here's Bar Louie and Pizza and Joy's, the Chinese restaurant outside of Chinatown. They opened up here to be by UIC, the students. They also have an operation in the Chinatown Mall, Joy. But again, getting back to Petco, they can have minute clinics where you can take them in and they can do a quick examination. Not trying to take the clinics, but they can refer you to the veterinary hospital. But if not, the minute clinic says, well, some over-the-counter will do. Truly, over-the-counter. Or people from the hospital, the Banfield Veterinary Hospital, can be part of opening up minute clinics in Petco. Truly. And you vets, the doctors have nurses, so you can be a nurse in veterinary world and so on. As the human population grows, there's growing pet population, growing farming, ranching and farming population. So again, there's lots of opportunity for growth. And so I'm heading under here, and I'm going to head towards Chinatown, where I've been going since it's existed. So, again, and like I said, I started eating at a Chinese restaurant at 6 years old, and I dined by myself. Yep, I dined. I didn't eat with my brothers or sisters or anything because it was across the street from my paper stand, and I used to go in and eat at the Chinese restaurant by myself. I sit at the counter and order by myself, truly. And they give me a menu, and I order, and I pay for it myself. And then they decided that they were going to waive my bill. So they liked me so much, truly. They were just, I was a hard-working kid, and they admired me. And so in turn, they waived mine, and I never forgot that aspect. So, but 6 years old, and, but it wasn't because I was a deadbeat bum. I was a hard-working kid, and they saw me in the paper stand all the time as I was outside their restaurant. And so they saw me, they saw the interaction with me, and then I came into the restaurant. I wasn't some deadbeat. I earned their respect. Like the guy behind me, he earns my disrespect, and this piece of garbage, they should beat the hell out of him. Tailgating me, whatever, they should. I believe he should be beaten. As threatening with a deadly weapon a car is. It's just like somebody pointing a gun at your head, and I don't understand it. A gun can kill you or it can wound you. So can a car. Another car, even being inside of a car, can wound you or kill you. So it is a deadly weapon. And they need to be treated as serious offenses. And in other places, like Japan and that, they would have no problem taking them out and beating the hell out of them. Now, who would do that? The government. The police would come and pick them up. They would bring them in. They would chain them up. And then they would beat them. Truly. So, it's a deadly weapon, just as a gun, just like a knife. When they turn it on you, a knife's used for food and everything else, and for wood and everything else, but when they turn it on you, it is no different. It is a deadly weapon that can injure you or kill you. And it's no joke. So I don't have any compassion for them. And I think, and if it's a police officer like this one flying up on me, and if he tailgates me, I believe they even get beaten worse, because a police officer knows the law, shouldn't break the law because they're supposed to be enforcing the law, so they can't break the law to enforce it. So if they're pulling up on you like this cop does, then you take them out and they get it worse. And you beat the living heck out of them. They get it worse. Not lighter, they get it worse. Because what does it say? Those that are given the most have the greatest responsibility and will be punished the harshest. So, a police officer, when they get tried, I believe, executed. Just as they get protected with execution, they get executed when they do things. Like the cop that shot the kid 16 times. I believe he should have been put to death. Not spared, but put to death. Because they carry deadly weapons. And they have to be in check. Like I showed you with American Sniper. What does he say to him? To Chris. If you make a mistake, they fry you. What does that mean? They execute you. They put you to death. So you better be sure about taking this shot. And if you make a mistake, you're going to be executed. You're going to be court-martialed. But some reason in the military, they understand that. Remember Abu Ghraib? What happened to all those soldiers? Remember Mike Flynn? He was with Trump and he lied about one thing and that was it. And the FBI could have locked him up and everything else. He got terminated and he could have been charged with criminal offenses and that. That's what happens to a cop when they lie. But some reason they don't understand this, and we treat our police officers with this, like, getting away with things. In the military, if you get out of line, you get your butt handed to you. You are unbelievably disciplined. That's the same way with law enforcement. And some reason we don't do that. And that's why we have all the bad law enforcement. But they should be punished the worst. When they create a criminal offense, it should be incredibly harsh upon them. Not easy, incredibly punishing. Because you gave them a right to kill you. You gave them the right to severely injure you. You gave them the right to subdue you with handcuffs and everything. So when they make a mistake, they should be punished harder than a civilian. They should be punished worse than a civilian. Not given grace, just like when a firefighter screws up and they abandon and don't do their job. I believe if they leave somebody to die, they should be put to death. So take this job with great caution because you're called on to risk your life, and if you don't risk your life, then we kill you. So again, if you're not willing to do your job and your duty says that, like in the military, if you did treason and didn't do it, they execute you. It's that simple. So I believe in executing people. So you do your job, and if you don't do your job, you get executed. It's that simple. So anyways, I'm in Old Chinatown, and here's the Chinatown where my client Betsy, she used to be the elder in this church with her and her husband. And her husband owns a bunch of medical practices, and she's a technology genius, and she is a whiz at technology, a female, and she's very gifted at technology. And her husband owned a bunch of medical practices, numerous medical practices. And I was talking, he was leaving them, but he could have expanded them and went back to China and opened up practices as well. Truly. He could have expanded into China, into not, I don't know, Hong Kong is pretty competitive, but there's a lot of second and third tier cities and so on in China that need the medical infrastructure still, by far. So even in the rural areas here, there's still need for these medical doctors, like the movie about Alaska and the doctor going to Alaska. I like the TV show. But they needed it in these Alaskan communities, in these small communities. So this is Chinatown Mobile, Ultra Mobile, but this is the Old Town Chinatown. Now, there's what I call off Chinatown, and here's a little flag right here, and you can see, and they have that little I don't know what it is. Yeah, you could say, like, I don't know what it is, like the all-seeing eye, because the yellow in the middle and then around it. So it's interesting. It's a staff, and that's the handle on the staff. So it could be the upper end of a staff, and that's the handle, and that's a gold, I don't know, a gold part. But down here is a little part, and so this is real estate in here. And the funny thing is, if this community gets better and they did what I said, all these Chinese down here would have gotten richer. All this land here around the Chinatown, if this Chinatown gets more popular, all their land appreciates and they become more affluent. So living the American dream, but they controlled it. I tried to get Daryl to do things, my friend who's Chinese, who was the head of the Chinatown Chamber, and then Raymond Lee, who basically created who funds the Chinese American Museum here in Chinatown. And the funny thing is, it's a husband and wife. She's Chinese, and the husband is a white male. And he has a big white beard, a super nice guy that runs the Chinese Museum. And so here's this little park right here on the side street in this community, and then it has some statues up here. And this is in Chinatown. But if they did what I said and cleaned up Chinatown and revitalized and everything, all the real estate value would go up in this area. And so here's a little park to sit out and meditate, and a statue of somebody written in Chinese. But it would be nice, I guess I could use the Google Translator. But again, this community, and so they put up stuff on the side streets here. So they put these little staffs all along the streets and that, and they look nice. I mean, it makes it look very Chinatown. You know, it has a Chinese, because the yellow and the red are traditional Chinese colors. And the funny thing is, yellow and red go very well with their skin. They look very good in those colors. So, anyways, they do. And that's why they were popular. And then they have good meanings to them. But they also look very good in those colors. And so here's a school that's a public school, Hines Elementary, and it's in the middle of Chinatown. And so I would assume that all the kids that go there, the majority of them are Chinese, because everybody around here tends to be Chinese. And so they have a great view of the Sears Tower looking that way, and you can see the Sears Tower. So it's right there, and you see those. So it looks, north. The Sears Tower is north. And so it's a nice area. And if they do things right, and they revitalize Old Town and the Chinatown Mall and that, and there's some sweet places I call off Chinatown. So there are places that are off from Old Town Strip and the Chinatown Mall, and I call them off Chinatown restaurants that are around Chinatown, but not on the Old Town Chinatown and not in the Chinatown Mall. And so, and there's some housing back there with some Chinese writing. And then the Chinatown Square, which was nice when they put this up. And there's some great hotels. And then here is traditional Chinese with the rooftop and everything. But that's a staircase, basically. But again, it's traditional Chinese architecture. But the mall, it's not Chinese architecture. And they really could redo the mall, the brick facade and that, and really incorporate, it's red, but they could really make it a brighter, maybe a little bit brighter red, and incorporate more traditional Chinese architecture. So, but truly, they can revitalize this, and all the real estate, the people that own property in the neighborhood, truly would benefit greatly from a thriving Chinatown. So again, this reflects upon them. And here's Lakeside Bank. Maybe they can do some financial literacy at Hines Elementary School and talk about 529 plans and Coverdale IRAs and planning for your child's future, and talk about how about getting CDs. You can use CDs and their, treasuries and other ways to plan, and you can use them to plan for the child's future and their scholarships and other things they can get into. And they can talk about all the paths. Your child going into ROTC and maybe going into the military or going into Peace Corps or AmeriCorps or these other service leagues. And that takes care of the education as well. And so Lakeside Bank can do that. And maybe they work with Calfway Bank, which is a Chinese bank. And then there's Pacific Global is a Chinese bank, and American Metro, my friend Raymond Lee owns, which is a Chinese bank. But again, Lakeside deals a lot with traders, and they deal a lot with the people on the exchange. So they had a big segment of their bank, their investor, were people that worked in the CME and on the different exchanges. They had a niche with them here in Chicago. And that was their original, and we were in a work with them, Lakeside Bank, a long time ago, when I was 2001, trying to get into doing planning for financial planners. But let's go down this way, and I'll show you what I consider off Chinatown. So this is outside the mall. So old Chinatown is down Cermak. Or not Cermak, Wetmore. I'm sorry about that. Is down Wetmore, and there's a little entrance here. Now, this is all the businesses outside the Chinatown Mall that surround it, Chinese restaurants, and this is the entrance right here to Old Chinatown, and it's right here on Wetmore. So Wetmore is the street that runs through or is Old Chinatown. And then you have the Chinatown Mall, but you have all these things that are outside the mall and outside of Old Chinatown on this street right here, which is Cermak. So again, they're not part of the mall. They're not part of Old Chinatown. So they're outside of it. So I don't know how they integrate or interact in the greater community, probably through the Chinatown Chamber and probably through CASEL, the Chinese American Service League. But under this bridge, we leave Chinatown and we move into McCormick Place. But we don't really get many conventions related to anything Chinese, do we? That I know of, but we could here in Chicago. And so, oh, that's right. It was the other way. I was going to show you a group of restaurants I considered off Chinatown. But again, let's just go down here. And I've showed you this before. But under the CTA on the other side, there's a bunch of hotels. Now there's the Jocelyn that's in Chinatown. And it's a small hotel. But you have the Hyatt Regency, you have the Marriott, and you have the Hilton down here. And so you have all these. And yes, there was a mouse. I don't think it was a rat. But again, they're supposed to be doing this program with them, lowering the population through natural control of birth. So anyways, there's the Hampton Inn. And then we have coming up is the Wintrust Arena. And so that's the bank. And then Fat Poor. I like Fat Poor. And they're on Division. There are other places on Division in Chicago. And I used to have some crushes on some waitresses that worked at Fat Poor. And I used to go in there as a regular. And I truly established some good relationships with some females that were waitresses there. Just like the Scout that's closed. Now, the manager I used to know, but Rich, but he left. And then I went there as a regular and got to know a bunch of the female servers and had very good relationships with them. So it just happened to be most of the servers were all female. So I have guys that I've met that were bartenders that I made friends with and so on. And I think guys that were food servers too, waiters in Chinatown and that were male that I made friends with. So here is the McCormick place. And like I said, on the other side could be the Michael Reese where the Chicago Bears Stadium goes. But again, you have McCormick Place. So lots of business convention. This is business tourism. So it's big money. All convention centers are about business tourism. So we're down here and I'm going to turn around. I'll go up to the Michael Reese place and then I'll turn around and maybe I'll go show you what I was talking about. The few restaurants that I called off Chinatown. But again, it's outside of the central Chinatown. Now, those restaurants I pointed out that are on Cermak are outside the Chinatown Mall. And there is other restaurants on another street that are outside the Chinatown Mall and outside Old Chinatown. But they're in Chinatown. So they're part of Chinatown, but they're not part of Old Chinatown or the Chinatown Mall. But they are part of Chinatown. And then there are restaurants outside that area that are Chinese, and I call them off Chinatown because they're not part of the main Chinatown. So we have a Dunkin' Donuts that's new that opened up next to a McDonald's, which is kind of interesting because now McDonald's carries Krispy Kreme, and then they have apple pies, and I love their cherry pie too. I love their apple and cherry pie. And they also had pastries, and now they have donuts, and they have coffee, and so on. And so it's interesting, but they have a full food menu, and so does Dunkin' Donuts. So they kind of are next to each other and they're exact competitors, but that's fine. If you can get enough traffic in the area, that's good. But if you don't get enough traffic, then it's not good. Like Chinatown gets enough traffic and all the restaurants compete against each other, but there's enough traffic where they all survive. So they work together to drive people into Chinatown, and then they compete for that business of those individuals that come into Chinatown. But they work together as an association to drive people into Chinatown because they want a bite at the apple, but first they got to get people to come there to get a bite at the apple. So they work together with the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Chinatown to drive people into Chinatown. So they get a bite at the apple. And if they drive enough people into Chinatown, then all the restaurants thrive. So Prairie Shores, this is all not too far from the lake. And this is Martin Luther King Drive, Martin Luther King Jr. Drive on this side. But this is really Michigan Avenue. This is Michigan Avenue. They changed it into Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. But it is Michigan Avenue. So, and up here, Michigan Avenue, as you can see, is 3 lanes plus parking on the side. It's much bigger here, the street, and it has big mediums in between, big islands. But this is Michigan Avenue, actually. And this is the south of Roosevelt, and they have a local Union 134. But again, the IBEW. But again, here's the Michael Reese land that's right up here. So again, one way or another, they got to figure out what they're going to do with this. But there's the Advocate Facility Hospital, and then there's the Inside Hospital. So there's good medical care right by a big stadium. So, and these medical care, I don't know if they do business with Chinatown, like the Advocate Outpatient over here. The Advocate Outpatient, and then the Inside Hospital can focus on the Chinese community, because that's a big community right there, and they can focus on these two, the outpatient center and the hospital that's inpatient, can focus on treating people from Chinatown, because that's a big community there, and it would be good for them. So, you know, where they can focus on a lot of Chinese patients, so Asian patients. So I don't know if they advertise in that and people from Chinatown come over here, but it's only 5 minutes away from them. So it's incredibly convenient for people in Chinatown to go to these two, and they can do pediatric care and everything for them, and they can take them right over here. Like the Advocate Outpatient can do pediatric care, or the Insight can do pediatric care as well, and it's right next to Chinatown. So they have a huge community, but I doubt if they're marketing into it, which it's very convenient for all those people. So why wouldn't they? And here's the Hyatt Regency. And again, this is the McCormick Place area. And then back here, you have a bunch of residents if you go up here. So again, there's a lot of residents, but I don't know how they're marketing those two hospitals, the outpatient medical care and the inpatient hospital. Because you can do all kinds of procedures that you're in the hospital for a day, even pregnancy, like having your baby there, you know, truly, or fertility clinic as well. Sometimes you have to stay in the hospital for a day or two with fertility clinic. But again, the Chinese population's dying, so I don't know what it's like in America, what their birth rate is. Is our Chinese population in America stable, or is it shrinking? I don't know the birth rate. So, but I know it is dying in China. I don't know if it's dying in America. But the Korean population is dying in Korea, and it's dying in America. So it's dying in both places, the Korean population. I don't know if the Chinese population is dying in both places. Now, the largest Asian population is Indian. But Dean only had one child with him and his wife. And so I don't know if the Indian population here is diminishing, but the Indian population I know is still growing in India. So Indian population in India is still growing. The Chinese population is dying. So, and the Chinese population here, I don't know. But the Indian population here might be dying. I have no idea about the birth rates, but they're the largest Asian group. But they're West Asian, not East Asian, or not Southeast Asian. The Chinese are East Asian. India is West Asians. So they look different. They act different. Truly, they're different people. The Himalayas have kept them separate. South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia is separate from West Asia. And so Indians and Chinese, they have seriously different cultures. Now, Buddha did come over from India into China, and that's how the Chinese got Buddhism. So it wasn't India. Buddha was an Indian person who went over into China. Now, they have influence, but they have no Hindus in China. No Hindus in East Asia, Southeast Asia, none. because of the mountain. The only thing it came over is Buddha, and that's because he didn't compete with Hinduism. And so he moved over and found a more receptive audience in China. So you have them, and they have distinct skin colors. They have distinct cuisines. So they don't really have similarities. And they look totally different. So, but you have to understand this. But I spent time in school studying all these cultures. So again, I'm going to go up here and go back through Chinatown by the Chinatown Mall, and then take you back by the off Chinatown. Here's a Vietnamese restaurant in Chinatown, Pho. They're into soups. I love soups. But the Vietnamese are known for soups. And when you're hot and humid, you have to stay hydrated. So they keep the body cool. Yeah. When you're hot and humid, when it's warm and dry, yes, hydration. But again, hot and humid, you have to stay well hydrated to keep the body cool. So either way, you have to stay well hydrated. And so what happens is that the Vietnamese, they do a lot of soups that keeps the electrolytes balanced and so on, and helps them deal with the heat. So unlike the Chinese and that, they don't really do a lot of soups. They have soups, but the Vietnamese really are focused. They're a soup society. That's their staple, soups. So that's why Campbell's Soup could do very well in the Vietnamese community. Truly. So they get Campbell's Soups in their home of the different Vietnamese soups. So I don't know if they have a canned soup or instant soup company. Now these places here that are on Clark, these are the ones that I call off Chinatown, because they're just outside of Chinatown on Clark, and they look nice, and it has a nail salon here, but they have several restaurants here, and they're off Chinatown, but they're nice places. They look like it. So I've never been in any of them, but they're off Chinatown. And this used to be housing for residents that went to UIC, University of Illinois Chicago, medical students. Medical students used to live here. And my friend Chris, his brother Kumar and Kumar, they focused on, they were Indian, and they had lots of Indian medical students, because UIC has a lot of Asian students. UIC has a lot of Asian, and they have a very big Indian population at the University of Illinois Chicago. Very big Indian population, big Asian population. And he used to do accounting for residents in medical school. So medical school students and medical residents at UIC, they used to live in these towers. And Kumar, and God rest Chris' soul, he used to play racquetball with me at the gym, and he used to hang out with, he's Indian, but he used to hang out with this short little Chinese girl. And she was really cute. She was sweet. And she used to go into the gym in the morning, too. Super nice. Truly, super nice girl. I haven't seen her in a long time. But they hung out. They were just friends. And she was Chinese and he's Indian. And they used to go into the gym and work out together. And so I don't know where she is, and I don't know where Chris's brother is. I've lost touch with him, but Chris died. But their last name was Kumar, so their accounting firm was Kumar and Kumar. And so I went to work with them, but Chris passed away. And one way he passed away is these places used to have a big problem with cockroaches, pests. And when I went in, he had lots of, around the walls, the edge of the wall, the white powder that they put down for cockroaches. And so that place, those towers were infested with cockroaches. So I don't know if that led to his demise, truly. But a coroner is supposed to do a toxicology report. And again, like I said, treat everything as a homicide because it can be environmental poisoning, but it's still poisoning and it's still a wrongful death. So, but I don't know if they did an environmental, a toxicology on Chris. But I went in there and I saw them. I'm like, well, this is kind of hazardous. But anyways, they used to have a big problem with cockroaches. And there's Reggie's over there, which is, good on wings and everything. That's right off these. But hopefully they cleaned up the insect population in those towers. So I don't know if the students just live there or UIC owns them. So I don't know. But anyways, I'm heading down into the city of Chicago, and I'm going to stop this video. That's my thoughts for the evening.